What's up, guys? Josh Lau here with the Card Guys, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my deck tech for Dorinthea QuickSilver Prodigy for Season 9 uh, Skirmish. Uh, Obviously, this is a Blitz deck tech. Now, I know a lot of you guys are classic constructed stands, but, it's good to have a little bit of variety in your life, especially, with Rosetta around the corner. There's not too much to do in classic constructed, and I do like to keep my Blitz decks updated. So yeah, I took a Dorinthea QuickSilver Prodigy to a skirmish today, and I managed to take that down. And I thought I would do a deck tech on the deck that I used. Now, those of you who saw me stream some Dorinthea QuickSilver Prodigy a couple weeks ago will, if you look really carefully here, you'll notice that like 15, 16, 17 of these cards are different. There's no yellow hit and run. There's no singing steel blade. There's no route. There's no oasis. We got a pair of punctures now. We have Iron Song Pride. Our equipment is a little bit different. And well, this deck was brewed literally the night before the skirmish. And I really had to think very, very carefully about how to construct this deck, because I felt like a lot of the Dorinthea QuickSilver Prodigy decks were a little bit outdated. They were either not fully utilizing the heavy hitters cards, or they were playing to they weren't taking into account the MST meta. So decks like Enigma, Victor, Zen, like the power level of Brute is now higher than ever. So yeah, there are a lot of changes were made to the deck to make it more powerful, more consistent. You'll even notice like the gore belching Rouse the Ancients combo is now not here. But yeah, there's a lot of little tweaks that I did. So let's discuss this deck. So I guess we need to start with the hero, because the hero is fundamentally, it's Dorinthea, but it's, also Kasai at the same time. It's also kind of like Hatchet's Dorinthea. It's a little bit of, it kind of sits somewhere between Dorinthea and Kasai, basically. And basically, the hero ability is Twinning Blade on a stick. So whenever Dawnblade Resplendent, not OG Dawnblade, but this specific weapon, Dawnblade Resplendent, gets go again, you may attack an additional time with the weapon. Now, what does that mean in comparison to the original Dorinthea? Well, when you present annoying, threatening things like Steel Blade Supremacy, Glistening Steel Blade, or, Iron Song Pride, even if they block your first attack out fully, well, that doesn't matter. You're going to get to swing again. That was a major problem with OG Dory, especially in a heavy armor meta, which is what we're currently in. They would just block your first attack, you wouldn't get your hero ability, and sad day for you, all your Dawnblade counters fall off, and you're very, very, very sad. But Dawnblade Resplendent says, that's okay, no problem. Just give me go again, and you could swing twice. Now, speaking of swinging twice, you guys will notice that, hey, there's no Refraction Bolters. Well, that's because Valiant Dynamos is really, really strong. Even though the games are shorter, there's still a lot of annoying breakpoints that Valiant Dynamos helps you take care of. And it squeezes a couple extra life over the course of the game. And you just don't need bolters. Like, you'll notice that there's no Twinning Blade here either, right? We're not swinging 3 times. We're basically trying to do something, very consistent, very, very cohesive, and we sprinkled in a little bit of ability to high roll and a little bit of tech for the meta. Okay, so let's break down the deck. So basically, everything over here is the main board. Now, you might be like, Josh, that is like half your deck is sideboard. Well, yes, that is true. Sigil, Sink, Take It on the Chin, Puncture, In the Swing, Iron Song Response, and Iron Song Pride. These are all sideboard cards. Now, obviously, almost all of them are going to come in, but based on first or second and the matchup, you'll basically pick. But let's talk about the sideboard later. Let's just focus on the main deck. So the main deck, let's start with our threats. So Steel Blade Supremacy, Glistening Steel Blade, both of these are really, really powerful, especially in a deck especially in the QuickSilver Prodigy deck. Now, the reason being is when you swing with Steelblade Supremacy and they block, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna swing again. And you're gonna get a +4 buff and on hit draw a card. So it's massive. This is a really great card. It synergizes with a ton of things in the deck. It synergizes with things like Shift the Tide of Battle. You're gonna get Go Again. It combines well with Glint because they're very likely to block this. Combines well with all the attack reactions. Even, you know, the baby pump like Iron Song Pride. People aren't playing D-reacts in Blitz in general. Most decks are very, very offensive based, other than Victor, Yoji, Enigma. So, you know, just pumping it by 1 often gets the job done. But basically, these 4 cards here, whenever you play them, says, give me tempo, give me armor. And yeah, you definitely want to play these out in general. Now, I guess I need to talk a little bit. I'm kind of a little bit all over the place. I'm sorry about that, guys. But this deck is kind of I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions. Like the striking question is, Josh, Glistening Steelblade gives you permanent counters, and Iron Song Pride says if you fail to hit, all your counters fall off. So, well, if my Glistening Steelblade hits, I put 2 counters on Dawnblade, and then I play Iron Song Pride, and then I fail to hit. Then what, Josh? Well, I mean, if you're in that situation where that's happening, you're already probably winning the game, right? Or you're in a very late game scenario where they're forced to block and any of these attack reactions are going to kill them. Basically, if you're farming counters easily, these attack reactions are going to help you preserve your counters. And that first counter is super important because it brings the Dawnblade from 2 and 3 to 3 and 4, which basically means they can't outvalue you. And that means they have to deal with this, which is one of the main weaknesses of Dorinthea, is that people don't interact with you. And when you slap down an Iron Song Pride, when you farm a counter with Glistening Steelblade, when you present Steelblade Supremacy, you basically are saying, hey, you got to interact with me whether you like it or not. Or you could try to outvalue 3 into 4 reset dynamos, but that's not going to be very, very easy. So, yeah, strong card. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some more of the reds here. So we got 2 copies of Red Slice and Dice. We also have the blue. This is just, you know, Warrior 0 for 4, and it also makes your attack pattern, you know, a little bit harder to deal with. Also synergizes very nicely with Shift the Tide of Battle. Also, if you have a counter on it, the Slice and Dice will bring this up to a breakpoint, which is quite nice. We also got 2 copies of Red Hit and Run. This is not the greatest card in the deck, but you know, you do need a decent density of go agains. I think there's, you know, over a 90% chance to have a go again, so be pretty consistent on that. Red Hit and Run, if you need to use it for go again, you can use it for go again. The fact that it costs 0 is pretty good, but generally this is actually used to pump damage onto the second attack, so it makes your attack pattern a little bit more ambiguous. So like, let's say you have an agility token and then, okay, then you attack and then you hit and run and then attack, back it up with it in the swing. It can be a giant spike of damage that they weren't expecting. So yeah, good card. Spoils of War and Run Through, these are basically the same card. They give you go again, they give you +2. Unsheathed, which is the new card from the next set, Rosetta, will probably be replacing Spoils of War. This is actually a pretty bad card, to be frank, because we don't have Twinning Blade. This costs 1, which is kind of annoying. It's a red, so yeah. Unsheathed will take the place of that. Just a side note, Unsheathed is a ridiculous card. Like, it's going to give you +3 and go again. It's just, for 0, it's just so good. Okay, so we covered most of the reds. The other red that is not in the sideboard is Blade Flurry. It's just, I mean, what's there to say about Blade Flurry at this point? Like it pushes your on hits. It's a 0 for 4. Really great arsenal target. Synergizes with a ton of things. It's great. Okay, so we talked about the reds. We talked about most of the yellows. So very similar to old school Dory, we're running a very low amount of yellow cards because we basically want a blue and we want powerful reds. So the bar for a yellow is very high. So we only have 6 yellows. I guess the main thing to talk about is, you know, if you can play out your glistening, good, but make sure you have an attack reaction, or at least you're faking an attack reaction. And remember that Glistening Steel Blade applies for the whole turn, and that, you know, your hero ability allows you to threaten twice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the blues. Now, the blues, there's 13 of them, and, you know, these are the... you see these quite often. So Precision Press, Hit and Run, and Glint. I'll give you Unconditional Go again. They're great. We got a copy of Blade Flash. I kind of just wanted a little bit more Go again. That's why that's there. It's not amazing. It blocks for 2, but it gives you a little bit more ambiguity. Also, if you go to like 3rd cycle, this is going to be, you know, it's going to be worth it's going to be worth the Dynamo counter at the minimum. We have Slice and Dice Blue. Warrior doesn't really have a blue that is a 0 for 2, so that's, you know, a 0 for 2 blue is not too bad. Also synergizes well with Shift the Tide of Battle, pushes some breakpoints. We got 2 copies of Goblet. Goblet is one of those ways to high roll on turn 0. So turn 0 high rolls, like Goblet would be good, Sigil would be good, Ironsong Pride would be good. Yeah, something like that. Maybe getting a hit with an agility token, something like that. But yeah, Goblet sets up a lot of key plays for this deck, because one of the strongest plays you can do is use Courage, swing. So that requires an agility token or a 0 cost Go again. You'll notice that the deck curve of this, in terms of resources, most of the stuff costs 0. And the stuff that costs 1, if you have a Vigor token, you can turn it into a very, very strong turn. If you have extra resources, you can always dump them into Ironsong Versus, or you can change how you block. The last blue is 2 copies of Blue Overpower. This is... I don't actually know if these should be Blue Overpowers, to be honest. They're okay. You might need them in the very late game. If you can get to late game with a little bit of tempo, sometimes you can do something cute with those. But generally, you're going to rely on your red attack reactions. But hey, you got a little bit of backup. Maybe this should be Fatal Engagement, just because it curves out a little bit cleaner. But I think it's fine. Okay, so we've talked about the main deck, which is, you know, these 2 columns and these 6 cards and the Blade Flurry. So now we have a giant ass sideboard to talk about. So the main deck, I believe, is 31. So you need to add 9 cards from these 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Yeah. So okay, maybe there's 29 cards. You have to add 11 of 14. Yeah. Okay, so there's 29 cards main deck. There's 14 in the sideboard. You have to add 11. So let's talk about the defensive cards. Sigil of Solace. This is very good in Blitz because 3 life is a lot in Blitz. Also, in terms of the play patterns, it's very good. Warrior often can, if you can get your opponent to commit to something that they think they're going to win, Wizards, Brutes, they'll all overextend slightly, and then you hit them with the Sigil. That can just win you the game. Also, starting the game at 23 is very good. If you're, this happened to me today, if you're playing against Lexi and they turn 0 Arctic Incarceration and you're like, okay, I pitch a blue, play Sigil, get rid of all the Frostbites. Let's begin the game at 23. It's pretty good. But yeah, generally these will come in. And especially if you're going first, there's very little risk to running these. And this is, good bait. So let's say you have a blue and you have a glistening and you swing, you have Sigil in hand, that's gonna cause them to freak out. Okay, we got 2 copies of Sink Below. Sink Below is a good card, allows you to filter. Although this deck is fairly consistent, a little bit of filtering can help. Sink Below also helps against Pummel, Lightning Press. If your opponent's going for pulping and you Sink Below, like that's almost game winning. Yeah, strong card, drags the game out a little bit, which is what we want to do anyways with the Valiant Dynamos. Got 2 copies of Take It on the Chin. This is one of the best cards that Warrior has access to. It provides you an agility token. It protects you against, Dominate. It, Rain Razors. Just in general, this is very, very, very strong card because it just synergizes well with everything. Okay, up here we have all of our other attack reactions. We got Puncture, In the Swing, Iron Song Response, and Iron Song Pride. So against decks with a lot of armor, we'll bring the Puncture in. In the Swing almost always makes the cut. It's just a powerful card. Iron Song Response is actually the one that probably sees the least play because unless you're up against a deck that really, really wants to block, people are not going to give you Reprise very often. So, this is great late game, but In the Swing is for most situations just better than Iron Song Response. But having the 0 cost is very good because sometimes you are playing with you're playing a turn where you're not pitching anything. So those are very nice. All right, Iron Song Pride. This is a card I think we need to talk about quite a bit because this is actually like the breakthrough eureka moment for me, was going like, hold on. This card is actually what turns your weapon into a monster. Now, not only does it bump it up to 3 and 4, which is very annoying. There's a lot of decks that cannot block well. And in addition to that, they have to block you twice. And if they don't have a D-React, there's very little chance that they can block you twice when you have an Iron Song Pride counter on your Dawnblade. Now, let's say they are a defensive deck. Great. Okay, I push it over by 1. Are you going to spend one of your precious D-Reacts to take the counter off? Okay. Now I'm going to swing again, and you have to do that again, right? So having this many attack reactions is actually quite important in this metagame. Now, the thing is that you tailor it, right? If you look, I guess it's more... we need to look at this in a different way. I'm kind of thinking on the fly here. There's a lot of cards that are not in the sideboard. There's no Oasis. There's no Nourishing Emptiness. There's no Command and Conquer. There's no Rouse the Ancients Gore Belching. There's no Fendel's Fighting Spirit. There's no Weakest Link. Now, why do we have no poppers? We don't have Fate Foreseen, for example. We don't have Shunts. We don't have Tunic. The reason being is in Blitz, we want to do one thing and we want to do it really well. And being able to tune the sideboard, the offensive cards and the defensive cards, and the ability to high roll is very, very important to the matchup spread in general. Now, I'm not saying this deck is going to beat Enigma and Zen 24/7, because it's not. But being able to tune your deck to deal with, there's like 40-something heroes now almost in Blitz. Being able to tune your deck to those, plus whether you go first or second, is really, really, really important. It's actually more important than having CNCs and some, you know, nourishing emptiness and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay. So rant over. Let's talk quickly about the equipment and then we'll get out of here. So we have a Balance of Justice. We have a Crown of Providence. If your opponent is going to draw cards, you're running Balance of Justice. If not, you're running Crown of Providence. So the key matchups like Brute, Zen, Lexi is probably drawing cards. You know, any deck that's running Command and Conquer, Pummel, you probably want to be running Crown of Providence. You know, standard stuff. We have Courage of Bladehold as our chess piece of choice. I've gotten questions for why is this not Grains? Why is this not Tunic? It's because Courage of Bladehold is just ridiculous value, especially when your cost curve is 0. And oftentimes we're trying to protect an Ironsong Pride counter. So let's say we get pressured heavily, but we have a counter on Dawnblade and we have a Blade Flurry in Arsenal. And maybe we gobleted the other turn, or we have a 0 cost go again, like Shift the Tide of Battle. Great, we can block with 3 cards and we can break Courage, use Shift after we use Blade Flurry, and we're cooking. So Courage Bladehold, very, very important. Speaking of Courage, Ironsong Versus is also very, very useful. The Courage token just makes it much more annoying for them to take counters off of Dawnblade. And it also synergizes well with Shift the Tide of Battle. And just helps to eat armor. And it also, if you're trying to incentivize them to block a bit for Glint, you can, you know, use Ironsong Versus. And then swing the weapon. They're a little bit more incentivized to use it, and then you can play the Glint. Valiant Dynamos. This is basically, you know, Kasai, Dory Hatchets at home. We're going to try to refresh this as many times as possible. There's some very, very annoying on hits. There's a lot of breakpoints that we need to deal with, and this just represents a, you know, 4, 5, 6 life over the course of the game, which gets you into those late game scenarios where you can, you know, have an advantage as a attack reaction based warrior. Finally, we have AB3. We have head, gloves, and boots. Obviously, this is brought in against Blaze, you know, Emperor, maybe. You probably need to run a little bit of AB against Vincent, maybe against Viserai. Against Briar, you probably will just run, you know, the standard stuff. So yeah, that's the deck. The deck played surprisingly smooth, and there is quite a bit of consistency in the deck, but it might be a little bit tricky to pilot because I think the equipment usage is actually like the most important thing. Setting up turns based on what you think you're going to draw is also very, very, very important. So let's say you have a goblet out. So now what type of plays does that unlock? Okay, it unlocks 1 cost stuff like Steelblade Supremacy or Puncture, coupled with Courage of Bladehold, right? You know, if you haven't seen your Take It on the Chins yet, you may not want to, you know, play this out. And basically keeping the right card in Arsenal coupled with using the equipment will, if you do that right, you should be able to get to the end game, the late game, in an advantageous position. And by then you've already seen half their deck. You have a very good sense of what they still have in their deck and how their deck is constructed, right? So, and those late game situations often heavily favor attack reaction based warriors. So the objective is just to get to the late game in an advantageous position. Okay, there you go. Dorinthea QuickSilver Prodigy, I think you guys, if you build this, I think you're gonna have a ton of fun. She plays like Dory, like Kasai a bit, like Hatchet's warrior as well. Little bit of everything, but you still, you know, you still have some of the specializations. You still have a lot of attack reactions and stuff like that. You have tons of mind games as well. And, you know, Ironsong Pride really providing a lot of pressure, which this was the missing piece. This is this card is really good. Don't leave home without it. Okay. Well, I guess that'll wrap things up. If you guys want to check out the deck list, it is in the description of the video. All right. Josh Lau here with the Card Guys. I'm out. See ya.